Hello and welcome to the Kognitio webinar today. Our webinar will feature a comparative analysis done by EMA Research that does an analysis of in-memory databases with a specific focus on analytics. This white paper was conducted by EMA Research and it analyzes Kognitio as well as SAP's HANA and the Oracle TimeTen database. My name is Michael Hiskey. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development for Kognitio, and I'll be hosting the webinar today and featuring our speakers. Again, use the Q&A feature on the right-hand side of the screen, and the materials will be made available after the call to you today, both the slides and the white paper itself. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce John Myers, Senior Analyst from EMA Research.
Good morning, Michael. Thank you very much for having me here today.
So, John, I'll let you introduce yourself and then hand over to Paul.
Okay. Well, my name is John Myers. I'm a Senior Analyst, part of the Business Intelligence and Data Warehousing practice at Enterprise Management Associates. I have over 10 years experience working in areas around business analytics and professional services. I've been part of our business intelligence data warehousing practice since 2011.
And Paul?
Good morning or good afternoon to you all out there. Paul Groom from Kognitio, Chief Innovation Officer. I've been working with Kognitio over a 20-year period, guiding on the benefits of InMemory. And hopefully today the marketplace will hear how InMemory is finally having its day.
All right, John, why don't you go ahead and get started, sir?
Okay. Well, the agenda that we have today is we're going to cover the Enterprise Management Associates comparative analysis that we did. I'll introduce you folks to the EMA Business Intelligence Continuum, and I'll talk a little bit about the aspects associated with our evaluation criteria. So, and then after I talk a little bit about our evaluation criteria and our process, I'll hand it over to Paul, and Paul will talk a little bit about the Kognitio product itself. The EMA Business Intelligence Continuum talks about how we look at data as it moves from data acquisition through data management, business analytics, knowledge delivery, and actionable intelligence. The area that we feel that in-memory database platforms falls into is the data management aspect of this particular framework. As we look at in-memory analytical platforms, we feel that looking at data acquisition, data management, and business analytics are going to be very important as associated features and functions that go along with those products. Specifically, we want to take a look at data loading. We want to look at the logical data layout. We want to look at the data processing aspects of it, and then the data access. Unrelated to these particular chevrons, but very important when you talk about how you implement an analytical platform, we want to look at implementation infrastructure, the scaling and sizing of those particular environments, and the support that the vendors provide for their products and solutions in the marketplace. Okay, the three evaluated platforms that we had in our analysis were the Kognitio Analytical Platform, which included the addition of the Kognitio MDX provider. We looked at the Oracle TimeTen in-memory database. Specifically, we looked at 11.2.2. This also included the in-memory cache functionality that went along with that. And then also we took a look at the SAP HANA SPS 05. And part of the HANA environment also included the SAP Business Objects Data Services software package. As we take a look at data loading, it's very important for these platforms to be able to ingest data from various and sundry data sources to do the analytical workloads associated with their end goal. All three platforms included both bulk and stream functionality that allow you to either load up massive amounts of data at one particular point in time, or to allow the trickle feed of information into the system. SAP and Kognitio had an advantage in terms of being able to have parallel loaders across all of the nodes associated with the analytical workloads. So you're going to be able to get good load performance from both SAP and Kognitio that you may not be able to get in the Oracle platform. In terms of logical data layout, all three platforms that we take a look at here each had a unique take on the way that they laid out the tables. If you look at it from a historical perspective, we usually see platforms have either a row-based layout, logical layout to their tables and structures, or they had a columnar-based layout to their tables and structures. Again, traditionally, row-based platforms, if you were doing an operational type of workload, were very good because you could load data into and update that data very quickly because it was based on a row organizational structure. Historically, columnar was very good for getting information as table scans, but it wasn't as effective as putting information into those tables because of the way that you were storing by column as opposed to storing by row. So its traditional setback was associated with data loading. For Oracle, they are a row-based platform that uses columnar compression. So they're going to be loading data in on a row base, but being able to compress that based on the particular values in columns. SAP has a hybrid approach where they have both a row and column support. They have very interesting technology that allows them to kind of bridge the gap between the two technologies, and Kognitio has a traditional row-based implementation associated with how they're loading data into the system. In terms of data processing, we at EMA feel that MPP processing is very, very important, and all three platforms had some form of parallel processing. Oracle had the least developed of the three platforms. It wasn't as massively parallel processing as one would like, but it does allow you a certain amount of parallel processing associated with it. SAP and Kognitio both use shared nothing MPP processing models for their analytical workloads. Also, one of the key pieces of data processing these days is something that we feel is important, is being able to access the strength of the MapReduce engine of Hadoop platforms. As it currently is consisted, Oracle doesn't do that as well as the other two platforms. SAP allows you to access MapReduce via the Hive framework for analytical workloads. And then Kognitio, however, allows you to go down and have direct access to the MapReduce frameworks that are available to you on a Hadoop cluster. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that later. In terms of data access, when we talk about analytical workloads, being able to access data either through SQL or the MDX, the multi-dimensional expressions language, are going to be very important if you're supporting the upstream aspects of your analytical platforms, whether that be data visualizations, platforms that look at cube formations within a data management platform, and all three platforms support SQL in a very strong fashion. SAP and Kognitio support the MDX framework that allows you to have OLAP cubes that exist within your platform to be able to support those legacy platforms that do that. In addition, all of the platforms allow you some form of coding API access to get at the data residing inside of the residing within the platform. This doesn't make them true NoSQL platforms, but it does allow that growing group of application developers who are utilizing data management platforms to not necessarily go through ODBC, JDBC connectivity to get at that data. Again, while these systems allow you to do access through an API, they're still storing that data in a structured format, which would lean them away from being described as a NoSQL platform. In terms of implementation infrastructure, all the platforms are available to be implemented in terms of an on-premise license solution. Oracle allows you to install on either Linux, Unix, or Windows platforms. SAP and Kognitio have the ability to be installed on Unix, Linux platforms. We also have the ability to look at the implementation avenue of public and private cloud. While Oracle, Kognitio, and SAP all allow you to have some form of private cloud implementation to be able to utilize provisioning advantages of those particular architectures, only SAP and Kognitio allow you to move into the public cloud aspect of that, and both of those are available as part of the AWS framework, which allows you to have very fast implementations and operational cost models. The next aspect is to take a look at scale and sizing. In terms of scale up or scale out, all three platforms allow you to scale up within a single platform or a single database server. For in-memory platforms, we're seeing more and more memory being added into standard server hardware. I believe the maximum these days in a relatively commodity available system is 4 terabytes in a particular server. We're also seeing the ability to scale out in terms of being able to link multiple platforms together, and blades are approaching 1 terabyte in main memory space available on those particular platforms. Again, Kognitio, Oracle, and SAP all have that ability to scale up into a single environment. When we move into the scale out of managing multiple nodes of whether it be medium-sized servers or blade servers, SAP and Kognitio have a bit of an advantage in those particular areas. When you use hash partitioning associated with SAP, it'll do it automatically for you to distribute that data. Kognitio automatically distributes the data in a scale-out environment. In terms of security, we take a look at security from the perspective that being able to support analytical workloads and make sure that organizations or groups within our organization do not have access to particular data sets is important. However, we oftentimes see security layered at many different points. It can be layered at the end platform of visualization. It can be managed in the data warehouse. But in terms of looking at security, we wanted to make sure that each of these platforms could, if they needed to, provide the security that is required. But oftentimes in an analytical platform, that is not as important as you might think for a system of record or for an end user environment. All the applications did industry standard in terms of table, user group, and object level security. When we get down into the row and cell level security, SAP had a little bit of an advantage, but again, when you talk about analytical workloads associated with in-memory platforms, security may not be as key to what you're taking a look at, but all the platforms provided good industry standard security levels. In terms of support, EMA feels it's very important to have vendors that encourage support and develop their customers' knowledge. And when we take a look at that, we look at that in terms of, do they offer professional services? Do they offer end user training? Do they offer those types of group, of user group environments where folks can get together and cross-train amongst themselves and among the community? And for all three of these vendors, they were very strong in terms of providing that training, providing that professional services in both on-premise and cloud environments, and then providing user group environments where teams can get together and work in those particular environments. So, overall, when we take a look at analytical workloads, we at EMA took a look at these three platforms. If you are in a particular stack environment that's associated with one of those two larger vendors, and you have products and services within that particular stack, that they all provide a level of service. Oracle may be not the most robust of these in-memory platforms. SAP is a much wider, SAP HANA has a much wider mission. It's more of a general purpose platform that'll be driving a lot of the SAP strategy moving forward. But in terms of Kognitio, if you want to use a best-of-breed analytical environment so that you can add in-memory processing to what you want to do, we feel that EMA Kognitio provides a very strong value for what you want to do in terms of both implementation strategies, the economics associated with it, the speed of response, both in terms of in-memory processing and the ability to access the processing of Hadoop clusters if you have those in your environment, and then also from the ability to be a bit outside of the, a particular vendor stack. So at this particular point in time, I'm going to hand it over to Paul Groom, and he'll talk a little bit specifically about how Kognitio can solve some of the problems of the use cases that he's seeing in the marketplace.
Thank you, John, and welcome back, everybody, to Kognitio. What I'd like to do now is spend 20 minutes just going through in a little bit more detail the Kognitio positioning, referencing back to some of the points John has completed. John and his team have completed an industry-level review, a comprehensive and concise review of the major players, and it's pleasing today to see so many of you attending this event, because there is a definite shift in the marketplace today in attitudes towards in-memory. If I reflect back on my years in this industry, the attitudes were always that it was too expensive, exotic, and therefore not for mainstream use. And it's interesting, if you look at this slide that's in front of you now, then the diagram on the left-hand side, you see a line that is sliding downwards, which is not the typical way of showing a chart. But what we're seeing here is the market price of memory. And this chart is in fact represented with log 10 scale so that it makes more sense to the viewer. So over the axis of time here, we can see a progressive and steady slide in the price of RAM, and then literally in the last few years, the price has just dropped through the floor. Now this has been further supported by a key factor, which is core-based processing, the ability for multi-core CPUs to do large workloads on the data in memory. And these technology benefits are now making it readily available to all at a very economic point. So if you're attending this session today thinking that in-memory is a very expensive position in the marketplace, please come talk to us, and we will show you that it's a lot more affordable than you might think. And in fact, through cloud-based services such as AWS, John referenced earlier the cloud-based delivery that Kognitio offers, we are able to offer on-demand systems literally measured in the order of a few tens of dollars per operational hour, and those just scale up to levels of many terabytes of RAM and many hundreds of cores of processing capability. And if we look to the right-hand side of this diagram, you'll see that the clients that we have in this space are all businesses that take an edge out of in-memory processing, because a lot of people here will be thinking, what's in-memory for me? What's it going to do for me? Why would I want this? I already have existing database and data warehouse. And these businesses you're seeing here are ones that have seen it to generate an edge, and that edge comes from things like latency, the ability for data to be brought in, to be ingested into the memory environment very rapidly, and for the queries to be executing in near real time. And that time factor is key. The other areas are workload, the ability for large volumes of complex queries. Now, in days of old, complex queries were largely for reporting, but we're moving beyond that now. Reporting is the standard that everyone's following. A lot of business now are moving into analytics. This is where you are doing work which is more computationally intense. This isn't just filtering rows, doing a few aggregates. It is actually computing complex measures, complex scores, and those then acting to filter customers or products or their interrelationships. And that value proposition allows more immediacy in the business, and immediacy is value. Now, one of the areas that people get a little confused on in memory, and this will be true of all the products that John has described to you today, is people start to think, well, why would I store data in RAM? Well, you have to think in a slightly different way. In-memory is very much about supporting workload. It's about supporting work done on data. And the reason that you place the data into RAM is not as a storage mechanism. It's to keep the data as close to CPU cores as you possibly can. So what you're trying to achieve is a minimal latency measured in the order of nanoseconds in terms of the CPU's ability to engage with that data and engage with data on scale. Now, John mentioned that products can do scale up, in which case you can put an ever larger server in, but as you put more and more workload on a given server, it slows down. The CPU cores can only scale so much. So it's vital in this industry that scale out, the ability to spread across many and more servers as your data grows, as your volumetric requirements increase, then the memory scales with you. And as you scale by server, each server comes with it a complement of CPUs and the cores, and that means that your ability to do more work increases as the data scales up. So it's important for this to achieve a linear scalability. So all of these technologies have persistence. All of them have mechanisms for protecting the data in memory, recovering from events and resilience, etc. But this isn't about storage. And I would posit to the audience today that one of the changes you will see in your future is that we will move away from systems where there was a long-term, in-depth storage of information, where your data warehouse was the store and the workhorse. And this is one of the traditional problems of a data warehouse today, that the data warehouse is becoming overloaded doing the work for bringing the data in, cleansing the data, achieving the quality that's required, and then supporting the queries and supporting the analytics that are coming through. And what you're going to find is that there'll start to be a separation, that the long-term stores will be things like the data warehouse, the newer offering of Hadoop, as John mentioned. This is the new generation of low-cost, very scalable storage. But what is required is a system or systems that will do the work for you. So there'll be a separation between what is storing the data and where the work is completed. And on the slide that you see referenced here, Cognitio's positioning on the market is that we occupy what we call the gold layer. And this is the central piece of this diagram that sits between the persistence layers. These will all be layers present within your business in the lower section. So you have already got investments in data warehouse. You already have existing mainframe and operational systems. And then you may be investing in the newer generation of the Hadoop clusters, probably through taking in some of the new generation big data, or just trying to achieve economy of scale. But if any of you are tempted to connect business intelligence tools, analytical tools into things like Hadoop, you've probably not had the most happy experience. Hadoop certainly is a very capable engine, but it is still very much a batch engine, which means that the dynamic business intelligence, the discovery tools, the complex reporting tools where people are used to drag and drop, where responses must be measured in the order of a few seconds or less, doesn't fit well with that model. Well, one way to recover from that is to place an in-memory layer between the applications that you've already invested in. So these are the standard tools, business intelligence tools, or standard desktop products like Excel as listed there, and to directly interact with an in-memory layer. And remember, the in-memory layer isn't representing the persistence of your data. It's not representing the long-term retention of data. It is providing an area where data models can reside. They can be built, constructed very quickly, And the construction of those models are literally through direct access to the underlying data. So through tables that you define in the in-memory layer, the data can be drawn straight in. John mentioned earlier that our MapReduce capability is very comprehensive. We have the ability through external tables to reach into a Hadoop system and literally through simple SQL definitions draw the data into RAM and dynamically build data models that you can then interact with your BI tools. And this means that data models will have a latency now measured literally in minutes, and you will have a persistence of the model probably measured in the order of hours, days, maybe a few weeks, but not in the terms of months and years, because you will be bringing data in, doing particular work. And this work's falling under a new category of the analytical sandbox. This is a tool or an area available to certain key users or certain key workloads where the power of the in-memory, remember all of those CPU cores, it's the cores that are offering the value, not necessarily the RAM. The RAM just keeps the data close, allows those applications to achieve high concurrency, complex execution, and very fast access times. And this means that you have a minimal disruption in your overall BI architecture. Your persistence is where you've put the investment. Your tools are the ones that you've already invested in. And then through an in-memory layer, you can then accelerate that. And there's a range of areas, as we talked about earlier. The world of reporting is moving rapidly into the world of analytics. Businesses are now very much focused on forecasting and prediction, complex scoring, and these require complex math. This is not something that is easily just put into SQL. And we have a concept in Kognitio called not only SQL. And this is where you can combine SQL with other languages. So you embed another language within SQL and execute on a massively parallel basis the code of that language. So for example, I could use R to run analytical functions, and I would be executing that with an order of 1,000 parallel executions of R, all working on partitions of data that have just simply been defined through a single SQL statement. And people have become a little bit confused by not only SQL, but it's the concept of being able to use best-of-breed languages to solve a given problem. SQL is not the best language to solve all problems. So for textual processing, you might be able to use languages such as Python or Perl to do parsing or simple deconstruction of XML JSON-type data sets. Or you could use an analytical engine such as an R for running things like clustering or regression. All we're providing is an environment where the SQL, which is the language that your tools and your analysts are most frequently engaged with, can use that as a data management layer, and then embedded within that they can place simple scripts for execution. Now, the other area in the business is the move to data science. I'm sure if any of you out there are lucky enough to have data scientists, I'm sure a few others will be quite jealous. But interestingly enough, I came across a great expression the other day called data artists. The thing here is about people being able to engage with data, and it is vital in this day and age that business users are given information, and that requires a level of experimentation. And to do that, you need fast execution. So again, in-memory is a perfect tool in support of your data scientists, if you're lucky enough to have them, or in fact probably your data artists, those people that are actively working to do the job day in, day out, who are moving beyond standard reporting. Now, within the report that has been published by John and EMA, we have seen that there are two very dominant players, SAP and Oracle. And I would imagine many of our audience today have investments in those businesses, but don't necessarily think that the big guys have got it right. Kognitio has been developing this technology in excess of 20 years. We have gone through a level of learning and education in the world of systems, hardware, operating systems, networking, that we think that the other players have yet to even experience. And this definitely gives us an edge. And that edge is vital. So we sit between these two players showing a strong, mature capability that we would like you and others to engage with and to demonstrate to you. And we can do this, in fact, yourself. We have a free-to-use license capability in the marketplace today. You can access the Kognitio software in Amazon through the AWS marketplace. You can gain access to the Kognitio software from the Informatica marketplace and from the Kognitio website. And we have a free-to-use for any system under 128 gigabytes of RAM. That is a perpetual business-grade license that you are able to use for operational systems. And we encourage you to engage with this. You are finding that the other vendors are offering similar capabilities because we're trying to break through, all of us are trying to break through into a marketplace that is just trying to get its head around where do all of these technologies fit. And I think the one thing we'd like you to take away today is that Kognitio has the perfect fit between your existing investments. That is your investment in your BI analytics tools and your existing investment in your data warehouse and operational systems, where we can place the gold layer and deliver for you an exemplary experience with performance. Because remember, InMemory, I don't think there's ever been any doubt about this. InMemory is always about high performance, low latency in terms of data arriving and being able to be handled, scalability in terms of the scale-out volumes heading into tens or potentially even hundreds of terabytes of RAM, and the associated CPU cores that are going to be doing that work. And this is all on commodity platforms. No special hardware, no special requirements, and our 20-plus years of maturity made it something where our ability to run massively parallel in Amazon, in AWS, was just straight out of the box. We did not need to do any special engineering for that. Our ability on the networking and on the scale-out with the systems was literally a straight drop-in and work. And that is available. We have clients using it today on an on-demand basis, others that have built their whole business line within the AWS infrastructure. Others of you may be investing in other cloud services. Please come and talk to us. Those cloud services are viable for Kognitio. We are not tied in any way to the Amazon infrastructure. And we can offer private cloud services as well if that is meaning to you. So you're talking today to a group of people that can offer you software, appliances if you so wish, and cloud services, whether public or private. And I think this came through in the EMA report today in terms of Kognitio is a very wide offering and compares very favorably to the two 800-pound gorillas on this report. And we're very pleased to be seen in such a clear light as a capable provider. So I'm finished with my section today. Any responses or any closing points from you, John?
No, sir. I think you did an excellent job of pointing out the strengths of your particular platform in the context of the comparative analysis. And like I said, I generally like to tell people what I told them after I told it to them. But we have the business intelligence continuum. We look at data management being a key aspect of this. In terms of the data management functional segments, we feel data loading, layout is very important, how you process the data, and then how you're able to access that data, in addition to things that you just talked about, infrastructure, scaling and size, and I mentioned security. So there'll be a white paper that reflects much more fine-grained detail than the information that we did an overview of here in today's webinar. That'll be available on the Enterprise Management Associates website that you see there. If you go to enterprisemanagement.com/search and input the Kognitio name in the search bar, you'll be able to get that you'll be able to see that white paper later on today. EMA is an enterprise consulting and industry analysis firm headquartered in Boulder, Colorado. We do a lot of information around business intelligence, data warehousing, things like data acquisition, as we talked about in the continuum, data management platforms, as we've talked about today, analytics, which is another topic that we talked about quite a bit about today, although tangentially, and on into visualization and then the action that those platforms take on. But we serve both end user IT professionals and other organizations that may want to take a look at our advice.
Well, John, we certainly thank you for your participation today. And Paul, we thank you very much for your participation as well. This will conclude our webinar. The white paper, as we said, will be available later on today in the next few hours. These slides will be available on SlideShare. And we invite you to continue interacting with us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, by any of the other communication methods there. Thanks again for your time and energies today, and we appreciate it. Bye.